By the time anyone noticed Marianne Keller was missing, the town had already decided what happened to her. She was 32, a single mother, worked nights at a diner just outside Ridgway, Ohio, the kind of town where people knew your name but rarely your life. She disappeared on a Tuesday. By Friday, the case was already dying. Marianne clocked out at 11:47 p.m. Security footage showed her tying her apron, laughing briefly with a coworker, then stepping into the parking lot with her purse slung over one shoulder. Her car was found the next morning, unlocked, keys missing, no blood, no struggle, just silence. Marianne's son, Ethan, was 7. Every morning before school, she made him oatmeal, even if she'd worked late. The morning she didn't show up, the neighbor called police. "She never disappears," the neighbor said. "Not like this." Police filed it as a missing adult, not endangered, not urgent. Marianne had no active warrants, no abusive partner on record, no history of substance abuse, which, ironically, worked against her. "She's an adult," one officer reportedly said. "People leave." Within a week, leads dried up. Within a month, detectives quietly reassigned. And within a year, the case was shelved. For nearly 6 years, Marianne existed only as a manila folder in the Ridgway Police Department. Her son grew up, her mother aged, and the town stopped asking questions, until a sanitation worker named Luis Moreno took a route he almost never covered. It was early March, snow melting, trash piled high behind an abandoned duplex scheduled for demolition. Luis noticed one bag was different, heavier, tied too carefully, double-layered, and leaking. He thought it was spoiled meat until the smell told him otherwise. Inside the garbage bag were women's clothes, folded, not dumped, folded with intent, a denim jacket, a diner uniform, and beneath them, a plastic-wrapped bundle containing human remains. Police arrived within minutes. The scene shut down the block, and when forensic techs examined the uniform, they found Marianne's name stitched inside. The discovery detonated across Ridgway. News vans lined the street. Former detectives were called back, and for the first time in 6 years, the words "homicide investigation" were officially spoken. But the damage was done. Witnesses had moved, memories had faded, and whoever did this had years of distance. The clothes weren't random, they were arranged, cleaned, preserved. Someone wanted them found. Someone wanted the case reopened. But why now, and why here? The remains confirmed what everyone feared. Marianne had been dead for years. Cause of death undetermined. No bullet wounds, no blunt trauma, no obvious knife marks, which meant one thing: whoever killed her knew how to leave nothing behind. Ethan was 13 when police knocked on his grandmother's door. He didn't cry. He just asked one question: did she come back? That question would break everyone in the room. Detectives went back to the diner, same parking lot, same cameras, and when footage from neighboring businesses was re-examined using modern enhancement software, they noticed something they'd missed before. A man standing near Marianne's car, watching, waiting. For 6 years, the disappearance of Marianne Keller had been treated like a story without a villain. A tragedy, maybe, a mystery, sure, but not a crime anyone expected to solve. That illusion shattered the moment investigators stabilized the old diner footage, because suddenly, Marianne wasn't alone in the frame anymore. Detective Hannah Price stared at the enhanced image as if it might blink. A man stood near Marianne's car, not walking, not passing through, watching. His posture wasn't casual. His hands weren't buried in his pockets the way someone killing time would stand. He faced the vehicle directly, as if waiting for a signal only he could recognize. And when Marianne appeared on camera seconds later, the man shifted his weight toward her. In 2018, the footage was grainy, pixelated, useless. But technology had changed. Facial mapping software pulled structure from shadows, height, gait, shoulder width, enough to narrow possibilities, and enough to raise a terrifying question. How had this man stood in plain view and gone unnoticed? The diner's former night manager, Raymond Cole, was the first to say it out loud. "That looks like Darren Holt." The name landed hard. Holt wasn't a stranger. He was a regular, a quiet one. Came in late, sat alone, paid cash, left generous tips. No one remembered him causing trouble, which investigators realized was exactly the problem. When detectives pulled Darren Holt's background, nothing screamed danger. No felony convictions, no restraining orders, no obvious motive. But his work history told a different story. Maintenance contracts, janitorial jobs, waste removal. Jobs that moved him through spaces people stopped noticing. Jobs that gave him access. And most disturbingly, he'd worked sanitation routes, including one overlapping the duplex where Marianne's remains were found. Detectives found Holt living 2 counties away. He answered the door without hesitation. Calm, polite, cooperative. He admitted knowing Marianne. "Everyone knew her," he said. "She worked nights. You see the same faces." He denied being at the diner that night, denied knowing anything about her disappearance, denied everything. And if investigators hadn't already known he was lying, they might have believed him. Cell tower data placed Holt's phone near the diner at 11:42 p.m., 5 minutes before Marianne clocked out. When confronted, Holt didn't panic. He smiled. "I get late-night cravings," he said. "Must have driven by." But the data didn't show movement. It showed waiting. As detectives dug deeper, Holt's name surfaced again and again in cases that had never been linked. A woman who vanished after a closing shift at a grocery store. Another who disappeared near a bus stop after midnight. A third reported missing but never found. Different towns, different years, same time window, same quiet gaps, same assumption. She left on her own. The garbage bag that revealed Marianne's remains wasn't random. It was municipal issue, the kind distributed to city sanitation workers, the same type Holt's employer used for hazardous waste, which meant whoever disposed of Marianne knew how trash moved, knew when routes changed, knew where things would be overlooked. The bag wasn't meant to hide her forever. It was meant to surface eventually. This question consumed the task force. Why leave her remains after 6 years? Why risk exposure? The answer, investigators realized, might not be guilt. It might be control. Killers who evade detection often revisit their crimes, relive them, adjust them, sometimes end them on their own terms. A warrant changed everything. Behind Holt's rented house stood a shed. Inside were items that didn't belong to him. Women's shoes, scraps of fabric, a diner apron, not Marianne's, but similar. Trophies, not proof of murder, but proof of obsession. Detective Price interviewed Holt again. This time she didn't accuse, she asked, "What do you remember about Marianne?" Holt paused, then said something he shouldn't have. She hated walking alone to her car. No one had told him that. As the investigation widened, Holt's alibis collapsed. Former employers placed him in areas tied to other disappearances. Old co-workers recalled him volunteering for late routes, always alone, always quiet, and always present where women went missing. Marianne's mother listened to detectives outline the findings. She nodded. Tears didn't come. "I told them someone took her," she said. "They said she ran." The guilt in the room was suffocating. Despite everything, prosecutors hesitated. No direct witnesses, no murder weapon, no confession, Holt knew it. He stopped cooperating, lawyered up, smiled for cameras. The case teetered again on the edge. Forensic analysts re-examined the garbage bag. Inside the knot, embedded deep in the plastic, they found something overlooked: skin cells, enough for DNA. And when it was run, it didn't just match Holt, it matched 2 other cold cases. Different women, different years, same killer. Investigators uncover how many victims Darren Holt may actually have, and why one mistake, a single overlooked bag, finally ended his freedom. But before they can arrest him, Holt disappears. And this time, he's not leaving anything behind. And the garbage bag? It wasn't the end. It was the invitation. When Darren Holt disappeared, it wasn't dramatic. No chase, no confrontation, no goodbye. One day he was there. The next, his house was empty. And for investigators who had spent months pulling his life apart thread by thread, that silence was the loudest sound yet. Detective Hannah Price stood inside Holt's rental house, staring at bare walls. The furniture was gone. The shed was empty. Even the light bulbs had been removed. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. Whoever Darren Holt really was, he had known the moment was coming, and he had planned for it. With Holt gone, the task force shifted tactics. If they couldn't find him, they would map him. Analysts pulled every missing person case within a 200-mile radius spanning 15 years. At first, the numbers felt overwhelming. Then, patterns emerged. Women between 25 and 40, night jobs, last seen alone, public spaces, minimal evidence, and the same conclusion, written again and again in old files: no signs of foul play. Each case had been investigated in isolation, different departments, different detectives, different assumptions. But when the files were stacked side by side, one thing became clear: the disappearances weren't rare, they were ignored. Then came Claire Donovan. Her case had never been closed because she had survived. In 2014, Claire had reported an attempted abduction after leaving a night shift at a distribution center. A man offered her a ride. She declined. He insisted. When she ran, he grabbed her, but she screamed. He let go. At the time, police dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Now, Claire's description matched Darren Holt perfectly. Claire sat across from Detective Price, hands shaking. "I told them," she said. "I told them he followed me for weeks." She described his voice, his calmness, his insistence that he was just trying to help. When shown Holt's photo, Claire didn't hesitate. "That's him," she said. The room went quiet, because for the first time, the task force had something they hadn't had before: a living witness. As analysts re-examined cold cases with new DNA testing, the scope widened. Skin cells from the garbage bag didn't just match 2 cases, they partially matched 4. Different states, different years, same DNA profile. Which meant Darren Holt wasn't a one-time killer, he was a pattern. Investigators realized Holt thrived in spaces where people lowered their guard: parking lots, bus stops, workplaces at closing time. He didn't rush, he didn't threaten, he waited until trust did the work for him. Holt's employment history revealed a chilling advantage. He knew trash routes, knew which bags were crushed, buried, or rerouted, knew which locations were overlooked. The garbage bag wasn't just disposal, it was communication, a way to say, "You missed me." Detective Price couldn't let go of one question: why Mary Ann? Why reveal her remains after 6 years? Behavioral analysts suggested a disturbing answer. Holt hadn't intended to stop, but something had changed: age, illness, fear, or worse, competition. 2 weeks after Holt vanished, a call came in from a town near the state border. A woman reported a man watching her across a parking lot. Same posture, same stillness, same waiting. She described his face: Price didn't need the photo, she already knew. With no arrest warrant yet issued, Holt remained legally free. Police released a public alert, media picked it up, tips flooded in. Most were false, some were hopeful, one wasn't. A truck stop attendant reported a man dumping a heavy black bag into a commercial dumpster, then standing there, watching it disappear. The date was recent, the location was real, but by the time police arrived, the dumpster had already been emptied. Detective Price attended a meeting with families of the missing women. Faces lined the room, stories overlapping, loss multiplied. "I reported him," one woman said. "They said I was overreacting." The silence that followed was unbearable. Using Claire's testimony, DNA matches, and surveillance sightings, prosecutors finally approved a warrant for multiple counts of homicide. But warrants don't stop someone who's already running, and Holt was still out there, somewhere, watching, waiting. 3 days after the warrant was issued, a sanitation depot worker found something strange: a garbage bag left beside a public bin, not inside, beside. Inside the bag was a note, just 4 words: "You should have listened." By the time the note was cataloged into evidence, Detective Hannah Price already knew one thing with absolute certainty. The garbage bags were never about hiding bodies. They were about being seen. When investigators laid out every known garbage bag connected to Darren Holt, a disturbing rhythm emerged. They weren't random. They appeared near places Holt had once worked, close to towns where victims vanished, always just after police lost momentum. Each bag was a reminder, a reset button, a way of saying, "I decide when this story continues." Behavioral analysts reached a consensus Holt had likely enjoyed for years. He wasn't just killing, he was editing the narrative. The handwritten message, "You should have listened," wasn't directed at police alone. It was aimed at the departments that dismissed reports, the investigators who assumed women left willingly, the systems that taught him silence was safe. Holt wasn't angry, he was vindicated. A junior analyst noticed something no one else had. All garbage bag discoveries occurred within 5 miles of closed or abandoned waste transfer stations, facilities decommissioned years earlier, facilities no one monitored, facilities Darren Holt had worked at early in his career. The realization hit hard. If Holt wanted to control what was found and when, those places were perfect. 40 minutes outside Ridgeway stood Transfer Station 12, shuttered, fenced, officially inactive. But satellite imagery showed something unsettling: fresh tire tracks, recent footpaths, and signs of repeated access. When law enforcement breached the site, they didn't find Holt, they found something worse. Inside the sorting bay were sealed garbage bags, neatly stacked, numbered, not trash, archives. Each bag contained clothing, personal items, identifiers. Some dated back more than a decade, and in one bag, human remains. By the end of the week, forensic teams confirmed remains from at least 7 individuals. 7 confirmed, more suspected. Some victims had never even been reported missing. They were the ones without families pushing, without photos circulating, without someone refusing to give up. Unlike Marianne's bag, these were preserved, protected from weather, protected from animals, protected from time. Holt had kept them intact for one reason. He wanted control over discovery. He wanted the ending to be his. In the station's old office, investigators found a digital recorder, still functional, still charged. The last file was labeled, "If you're listening, you're late." Holt's voice filled the room, calm, measured. "I told them," he said. "I told all of them." He described learning early that people didn't fight indifference. They ignored it. he used that. Holt wasn't confessing, he was instructing. He explained how he selected locations, how he approached victims, how he chose when to reveal evidence. And then he said something that froze everyone listening. "I stopped when I decided to," Holt said, "not when you came close." The recording was timestamped 3 days earlier, which meant Holt had been at the station recently, very recently. And if he had wanted to disappear, he wouldn't have left this behind, unless he wanted something else. Detectives realized too late what Holt had done. He wasn't running, he was finishing. Transfer Station 12 wasn't a hiding place, it was a punctuation mark. A park ranger reported a man matching Holt's description near a wooded area adjacent to the station, alone, calm, walking deliberately. Search teams deployed immediately. Tracking dogs followed a scent trail to a clearing near a river. They found Holt's jacket, his wallet, his phone, placed carefully, as if arranged. But Holt himself was gone. No footprints beyond the waterline, no signs of struggle, no body. Did Holt end his life, or did he do what he'd always done? Disappear quietly. The river never gave Darren Holt back. Weeks passed, then months. Search teams scoured miles of shoreline, downstream debris fields and wooded banks. Cadaver dogs followed scent trails until they vanished into water and silence. There was no body, and for investigators who had spent years chasing men who hid behind chaos, that absence felt deliberate. Because Darren Holt had never been chaotic. He had been careful. The department released a statement. Based on evidence recovered and circumstances surrounding his disappearance, Darren Holt is presumed deceased. But no one on the task force said it out loud in private, because presumption wasn't certainty, and Holt had taught them one thing above all else: never trust the version he wanted you to believe. Forensic teams worked for months inside Transfer Station 12, cataloging evidence. By the end of the process, they confirmed 7 sets of human remains, 11 additional bags containing personal effects, at least 14 distinct victims, and even that number came with an asterisk. Some bags were empty, placeholders, markers of intent. Investigators believed Holt kept meticulous internal records, many of which were never recovered. The true number would never be known. This question haunted Detective Hannah Price more than any other. Why Mary Ann? Why expose her case after 6 years of silence? The answer didn't come from evidence, it came from pattern. Mary Ann Kaler was different. She wasn't transient, she wasn't estranged, she wasn't someone the system could quietly forget. She had a child, a mother who pushed, a neighbor who called police. And Holt, for the first time, had miscalculated. Holt had always chosen victims whose disappearances created minimal friction, but Mary Ann's absence created noise. Not enough to solve the case, but enough to irritate him. Behavioral analysts concluded Holt returned to Mary Ann's remains not out of guilt, but irritation. The garbage bag wasn't remorse, it was correction. He wanted the story to end properly, on his terms. Experts dissected Holt's recorded message frame by frame. His tone wasn't triumphant, it was instructional. He spoke as if lecturing a system he believed had failed. "You miss what you expect to miss," Holt said in the recording. "You ignore what makes you uncomfortable." He wasn't confessing to crimes, he was confessing to a belief that indifference was his greatest weapon, and for years it had been. Detective Price stood in a community hall months later, facing families who had waited decades. Some cried, some sat in stunned silence. One woman asked the question no one wanted to answer. "Is he really gone?" Price didn't lie. "We don't know," she said. but he can't hurt anyone else. That was the closest thing to justice she could offer. Ethan was 19 when police finally closed his mother's case. He asked to see the file. He didn't read everything, just the last page. Cause of death: homicide. Suspect: Darren Holt, presumed deceased. He looked up at Detective Price. "Did he win?" he asked. Price shook her head. "No," she said. "He lost control of the story." Ethan nodded. It wasn't closure, but it was truth. This case wasn't solved by brilliance. It wasn't cracked by a confession. It was reopened by chance, by a sanitation worker noticing a bag that felt wrong, which terrified investigators, because it meant something unthinkable. How many cases stay buried simply because no one noticed? Holt didn't operate in darkness. He operated in blind spots: night shifts, parking lots, transit routes, trash systems, places where responsibility blurred, where no one felt fully accountable. He didn't beat the system, he used its assumptions. Investigators believe Holt entered the river knowing exactly what it would mean. No trial, no public reckoning, no moment where victims reclaimed power in court. Just uncertainty, just questions, just one last manipulation. Because even in death, real or staged, Holt wanted control. The case is officially closed, but files remain open. New DNA submissions are still compared. Families still call. And sometimes, late at night, Detective Price revisits the evidence wall, now dismantled and boxed away. Because cases like this don't end. They wait. Everyone gave up on this case because nothing looked wrong. A missing adult, no blood, no witnesses. Until a garbage bag forced the truth into daylight and reminded everyone of something uncomfortable. Evil doesn't always hide. Sometimes it's simply ignored. Do you believe Darren Holt is truly dead, or did he disappear one last time? How many victims do you think were never found? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. Subscribe to Unimaginable True Crimes for more deep dive investigations. Turn on notifications because the next case might already be waiting to be noticed. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with awareness.